How's it going, everybody? Smitty here. This is Ukulele Smitty. So this video is going to be my thoughts, my opinions, and a little bit of advice on playing a pick with the ukulele. I have here some of my favorite picks that I like to use, and I'll be kind of talking about a few of them and which ones I like and which ones I don't necessarily recommend. And I'm not an expert. I'm not claiming that this is, the gospel truth or anything, but this is just what I've kind of come to, my views that I've come to over a few years of playing the uke. So first of all, just address the elephant in the room. Some people are completely against using a pick on the uke, and they believe that the pick is, sacrilegious, and you should never use a pick with a uke. They're only for guitars, and they're kind of purists in this sense. And I disagree with that. I think the uke can sound terrible with the wrong pick and the wrong situation, but I also think that some picks can sound really, really good. So I think they have their place. Now, what are the advantages? Well, a pick allows you to play louder. Now, if you play that same note with your thumb, it's quieter, and with your fingernail, you can get a good volume as well, but they allow you to play louder. They allow you to play tremolo that you might not be able to otherwise. You can do that with a fingernail, but you do have to grow your nails quite long for that, which for some people is an issue. And they can provide a nice tone, a lot of asterisks there, if used correctly in the right circumstances. So, first of all, this is my first bit of advice and my first big opinion. If you're mostly just strumming, I don't think you should use a pick. Now, let me give you an example, okay? So I've got a whole bunch of different picks here, but regardless of the thickness, if you're strumming with a pick, it's not going to sound as good as using your finger. So let's just pick a random one. Let's start with a Jim Dunlop thin. And I'm just going to... Okay. Now let's do a medium one. Let's see, that was a thin, so let's find maybe like a 0.5 or 0.6. Okay, a little thicker. Generally speaking, thin picks sound really, really, really brittle and metallic, and no, not metallic, more like plasticky on the uke. And even if you use a thick pick, like here's a 1.5, it's not going to sound as good as if you just use your finger. Now, if you use your finger and you're using your index finger, downstrokes are going to have a louder sound, and upstrokes are going to be the soft, fleshy part of your finger, and you get a nice, balanced, warm tone. Now, okay, I will say, there are some people who have, for whatever reason, whether they have a disability or they have an injury they're dealing with, they can't use their finger to strum. And so there is a pick that helps with that. It's made by Diodario, and it's like a felt thick pick. It's 3 millimeters, so extremely thick. The only scenario I would use this in is if for whatever reason you can't use your fingers to strum and you mostly just want to strum, because if you play single notes with it, it sounds pretty terrible. You can't play fast at all because it's so thick, it feels like you're playing with a big chunk of a carpet. And it's so, I don't know, like the sound is kind of just like muffled, right? But for strumming, it's probably the least offensive out of all picks. And I have seen people use them to okay effect. Would not recommend it for single notes. Okay. So, basically, picks are going to shine. Like I said, you probably shouldn't be playing a pick for strumming. Picks are going to shine when you want to play individual notes, okay? Now, let's just go on to my next big opinion slash recommendation, which is don't use a thin pick. If you use a really thin pick, you get a really thin, brittle sound. So here's that thin one again. Okay, now let's do the same thing relatively with, this is a Golden Gate Extra Stiff, okay? Louder a little bit, more of a fat kind of solid tone than a light thin tone, okay? So basically I would say try to avoid anything under, I don't know, 0.7 millimeters, you want something heavier, right? So 7.7 is probably the least. There's a Jim Dunlop Delrin 500 7.1 prime grip. It's probably, you can see the difference just from that to here's a 0.58 Jim Dunlop with a gator on it. It's just less of a fuller, thicker, rounder sound, okay? So if you're going to use a pick, probably you shouldn't be strumming with it. You're going to sound better with individual notes, and I would recommend a thicker pick. But let's just address some other ways to play, okay? So maybe you hate picks, and you just want to use your thumb for individual notes. Well, you get a nice warm tone with your thumb, which is great. It's very consistent, very easy to do. But it's not that loud, right? So there's a big drawback. Another thing is, you can't go up, down, up, down, up, down like you could with a pick. So enter the fingernail. Some people like to grow their fingernails out. And you'll see a lot of uke players, I know like Jake Shimabukuro and others, they use their thumb, but they use the thumbnail. For some reason that always felt weird to me. What I do is I grow my fingernail out a little bit, which I think Troy Fernandez and some others did that. And you can still get a little bit of a tremolo, and you can do pretty fast that way. It's not going to be as good as a pick in that regard. That's one of the things that's really nice about using a pick is you can get a really fast tremolo. But there's downsides, right? You kind of have to file them. You have to worry about the angle. They break. There's things you can put on it to, nail polish type deal to make it harder. But I've just found that if I get to a certain point, it's going to break, and it's annoying. And so I've experimented with letting it grow, not letting it grow. It gets in the way of other things, and you get like weird stuff in it. Like if you're opening a jar of peanut butter, now you're constantly digging peanut butter out of your nails. And people that have long nails already, maybe that's not a big deal, but for me, that was just weird. So I don't let it grow too long. So for me, the best recommendation, or I would say where you get a little bit of everything, the one I use the most is a thumb pick, okay? Thumb picks are not made for ukuleles. They're made for fingerstyle guitar, more or less. Of course, there's banjo thumb picks, but those are going to be metal most of the time, which is not going to sound good on the uke. But just a regular Jim Dunlop thumb pick. Planet Waves makes another one, Diodario Planet Waves. It's basically the same thing. And then Golden Gate makes a good one as well. You can get, a multi-pack of these for not too many bucks. And the thing I like about them is they're so thick and fat that you get such a nice, warm, fat sound. So I'll give you an example playing through something with a few different picks, all right? This is from Melodic Meditations ukulele by Daniel Ward. This one is great, and also Arpeggio Meditations I like even more. But this is Melodic Meditation in C, and I'll give you an example with a thumb pick. On and on, but compare that with, let's pick a medium or even a thin pick. So here's a 0.73 PV. So I hope you can hear that it's just a thinner sound. It's a more metallic, plasticky sound. It doesn't have that full depth and warmth that you get from a thumb pick. It really doesn't have the same sound and warmth that you would get from using your thumb like this. So, if you use a pick, I would really recommend getting a thicker one. I think thumb picks are one of the best all-around ones. I would say at least 1 millimeter. Maybe even bigger. So this Golden Gate Extra Stiff is a really good one. Another one I like is called a Jim Dunlop Stubby Triangle 1.5. That one also gives you a nice fat tone. Anything over 0.7, just the classic Jim Dunlop Nylon 1.0 is a good one. 1.25 is 1.0 is black. 1.25 is like a, what's that color? Maroon. These are pretty They're pretty good middle ground because you do get a little bit of flex, which is nice, but they still give you a nice fat tone. I think the 1.25 is even better. Haven't been able to find this exact Jim Dunlop in a 1.5. I think that would be great. But my favorite by far, other than a thumb pick, is this Jim Dunlop Flow 1.5, and I think you can get a 6-pack or a 12-pack on Amazon. And what got me into all this pick stuff was I've been playing mandolin. I got back into mandolin recently, and that's obviously a huge part of the mandolin. You play it with a pick, and this is my favorite pick for that. It doesn't really flex at all, which is what you want. You get such a nice fat rounder sound when the pick doesn't flex, and I like that there's a really good grip on it, and it gives you a good tone, because to me, some of the ones that sound really great, it's really hard to grip well. The Golden Gate sounds great, but there's no grip at all on it, and so it kind of slides out. And so that's one of the big advantages of, number one, either not playing with a pick at all. You're never going to lose your pick if you're using your fingers. Nothing's ever going to fall in your sound hole. My goodness, when a pick falls in there, that is a pain. But this is what makes the thumb pick shine. It doesn't fall off. The other thing that makes it shine is you can still strum because it's hooked on there. So if you want to, you can kind of switch between strumming, picking, which it's not going to sound as good if you do that same thing with a regular pick, right? Picking individual notes part will sound great, but the actual strumming won't. So yeah, I would just kind of advise, if you're going to play with a pick, get a thicker one. Don't get a thin one. Don't strum a lot with it because it's going to sound better if you use your finger. And there's a couple other tips here I have for you when it comes to using a pick. And a lot of this is just information that I've picked up firsthand from playing the mandolin and going through some mandolin lessons. Number one is, when you hit the strings dead on, like parallel with a pick, you get much more of a, I keep saying metallic because on the mandolin, that's what you say. It's like a metallic sound rather than a nice woody, earthy sound. It's kind of the same thing with, even though we have, fluorocarbon, nylon, whatever strings. When you hit them at an angle though, rather than dead on, at an angle like a 45 degree, I don't know if that's coming out so well. I just have a very basic mic setup here, snowball mic, and I'm not editing the audio at all, so you can hear the straight direct sound. But it sounds a lot less plasticky and thin when you have a little bit of an angle, because the strings are being hit rather than dead on by the pick. They're being hit where a downstroke you hit on one side and upstroke you hit on the other side, which gives it a much nicer tone. The next big tip for using a pick is that you don't want to be tense. Tension is the enemy of playing well. The looser and the more relaxed you hold your pick, the better you're going to be able to play, the faster you're going to be able to play, the cleaner. So don't grip the pick super tight. Try to get it really nice and light, and that's where having a little bit of a grip on there comes in, and that's why I love picks that have a nice grippy surface. And the next thing is this, the next big tip for using a pick with the uke, because a lot of people that play the uke aren't used to using a pick, because we've either been told or we've seen so many people not use a pick that we just think, why would I do that? So when you get into it, you're not going to have the experience that a guitar player or a mandolin player or whatever would have. So if you do use a pick, like I said, try not to hit the strings parallel, hit them at an angle, hold the pick lightly. And here's a big thing. A lot of people will have a hard time just holding the pick like this and not having a finger on the top of the ukulele. So they need like something as a reference on the ukulele to where they can kind of know where they're going. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's good players that use their finger on a guitar or banjo or whatever, and there's some, and many don't. But I would say if you do use your finger as that little guide, don't press hard, okay? Number one, it's going to give you a lot of tension, which is going to travel all the way up your arm into your shoulders. It's going to make you feel sore. You're not going to play as well. You're not going to play as accurately. You're not going to be able to play it as long. And the next thing is you're going to dampen the vibration of the top of your instrument. Now, ukes are already quite limited in their sustain because they're so much smaller than bigger instrument like a guitar. There's less room in there of what's actually vibrating around on the top and inside the instrument. So when you push down hard and play, you really limit that top vibration. So you're introducing stiffness, playing slower, and you are making the top not vibrate as well. So let me just summarize everything. If you are going to play with a pick, I would say get a thicker one. Don't get a thin one. I would say for the most part, it's not going to sound great when you strum. The one kind of exception to that is one of these felt picks specifically designed for ukulele. And then you're going to sound better playing single notes, and a really good option is a thumb pick because it's a little bit of everything. The big drawback to a thumb pick, which I didn't mention, is it's not going to be as fast for tremolo and really fast note picking. It's not going to be as fast as if you just have a regular pick, because you're going to have a little bit more accuracy and a little bit more feel with that for fast playing. And also, they're very rounded and they're not as sharp, so I think that influences that, not being able to play as fast as well. So yeah, those are all my kind of thoughts, opinions, whatever on picks. I think people who say you should never play a pick, it's just being overkill. You know, there's a time and a place for everything, and there's no reason to be dogmatic and super traditional about it. I think, you know, you can see James Hill on his the Ukulele Way course. He has a couple songs where he's showing you how to use a pick. So there's people that are amazing at the uke that do it. It's not as common for sure as to play, you know, guitar with one, but they have their place. I would say the reason a lot of people think picks are terrible is because they use a super thin pick like this, 0.6, and they play chords strumming with it, and that just doesn't sound as good as using your finger. So, hope that was helpful for you all. Let me know in the comments what you think. Like I said, I'm not an expert, but these are my opinions, and hopefully someone found them useful. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.